Hello and welcome to Reef TV. I'm Greg Patterson, Membership Services Director at Reef. In this episode of Reef TV, we look at the subject that affects every employer throughout Australia. That is the obligation to make statutory superannuation contributions on behalf of employees. To look at this subject and clear up the mysteries, I'm joined by Mal Smith, CEO of REI Super, the superannuation fund for real estate professionals. Thanks for joining me, Mal, to discuss and examine what to most of our members is a complex subject. But let's start at the beginning and look at the essential elements of Australian superannuation law. What do the super laws say about an employer's obligation to make superannuation contributions on behalf of their employees?
Thanks, Greg. So the super guarantee laws have been in place since 1992 in Australia, and they're a compulsory system of retirement savings for members. And employers' obligations are currently to pay 9.5% of members' wages and salaries. That will increase to 10% in 2021 and further increase to 12% in 2025. So it's important to think of superannuation as deferred wages, and therefore the protections around employer obligations are quite extensive.
So Mal, you've indicated that the employer has an obligation to currently pay 9.5% of an employee's ordinary time earnings, which is commonly called OTE, into the employee superannuation fund. Right. What constitutes ordinary time earnings? And I think most importantly for our members and subscribers, does it include commission payments?
Yeah, and the answer is yes, it does. So it's base pay plus commissions. But given we know that a number of our members have a variety of remuneration arrangements in place, a good way that employers can be absolutely certain is if they go to either the REI Super website or alternatively the ATO. So the ATO website also defines in a lot of detail what's in and out of OTE. So if employers have a particular payment that may be unusual in this industry, then going to the tax office website is the final source of authority in that area. But importantly, as a general principle, I guess, for most of your salespeople, it's commissions that are included in that definition of OTE.
Is there a limit to the amount of super contributions that an employer must make on an employee's behalf?
Yeah, absolutely. That's capped. And the cap is applied on a quarterly basis. So currently the cap is applied at around about $52,012, I think, per quarter. Any earnings above that level are not subject to a superannuation guarantee amount. So that really means on an annualised basis that around $211,000 is the maximum annual salary that you need to calculate superannuation on. But for your members' perspective, I think it's important to distinguish and make sure that you apply that on a quarterly basis. So it's a quarterly test of about 52,000 and some change per quarter, because as we know, particularly people in real estate sales may have variable remuneration from quarter to quarter to quarter. So it's important that the payroll people actually use and apply a quarterly test.
Right, okay. I think there's some confusion around how often employers must make these superannuation contributions on behalf of the employees. What does the law say around the timing of superannuation contributions?
Yeah, look, that's very important. As I said, the SG test is a quarterly test, and employers are obliged to make those super guarantee payments within 28 days of the end of the quarter. So, for example, the quarter ending 31st of December, that's 28th of January. The quarter ending 31 March, that's 28th of April, etc. Now, at this point, while super guarantee contributions can be made quarterly, it's also important to distinguish for employers that if members are making voluntary contributions either pre or post-tax, that is either after-tax contributions or salary sacrifice, an employer has to remit those to the super fund within 28 days of them being deducted from people's pay. So it's not acceptable to hold back those voluntary contributions, if you like, until you meet your quarterly employer SG obligations. So those two payment frequencies are really pretty important.
So it could be monthly, it could be quarterly.
Correct. So SG, it's quarterly. Those voluntary contributions by members, it's monthly.
Gotcha.
I probably should talk about what happens if employers don't actually meet those obligations in terms of time, because in terms of SG, it can be quite expensive for employers. So if employers don't meet their obligations, they may be faced with what the ATO calls is the superannuation guarantee charge. So the ATO can levy interest penalties on late paid SG contributions up to 10%. They can apply an administration charge of up to $20 per late payment per person per quarter. So it can be quite expensive. Now, what's in the pipeline at the moment is, in fact, that the government has recognised that because this is deferred pay and because SG compliance is important to a fully functioning retirement system in Australia, they're actually talking about further beefing up the penalties. Now, that may include for employers that are deliberately flouting the SG obligations, possible fines and possibly even jail time in extreme cases. So the other thing I'd like to make your members aware of is that the liability and the obligation, as always, rests with the business owner, with the principal. So it's not an acceptable defence to say, I outsourced this to my accountant or my payroll person. They forgot to make the superannuation guarantee payments on time. The tax office will look at that as if you're the employer, you're the principal, you're the one who's responsible. So long story short is that if employers meet their obligations, pay their amounts on time, based on the correct ordinary time earnings definition, no problems. If they move outside that, it can potentially become quite nasty for them.
Yeah, good advice. Can you tell us just a little about REI Super and whether it can be chosen as a nominated super fund by someone perhaps working outside the real estate industry?
Yeah, look, thanks for that question, and I'm delighted to. REI Super's been around since 1975. We grew out of the real estate industry and we've got a footprint firmly still within the real estate industry. But a couple of years ago, we converted to what's called public offer status. And what that really means is that people who work in real estate who then move to other employers outside the industry are welcome to stay and keep their membership going. And equally, people who may, for example, be family members of those working in property may decide that it makes sense to combine a number of different superannuation contributions from different family members into REI Super. So yes, we can take members of the public. Our footprint remains firmly in real estate, but we are seeing an increasing number of members from outside of real estate join the fund.
Great, thanks. Well, Mal, thanks very much for that very informative overview, and I'm sure that our viewers will now be better informed of their superannuation obligations. Thanks for watching this episode of Reef TV. Don't miss our other episodes that deal with the range of employment topics to help you stay on top of the latest workplace relations information and news. I'm Greg Patterson. See you next time.